I'm Rachel, I'm 29 years old, and just yesterday my life flipped upside down. Because I became a millionaire overnight. My Aunt Caroline left me everything when she passed. $2 million in cash, her massive Victorian mansion, and the controlling shares of her company. I was still drowning in grief when the door opened. And in walked two people I never thought I'd see again. My parents. The same parents who abandoned me 16 years ago, without so much as a goodbye. And they didn't come back with apologies. No, they came back smiling, as if nothing had happened. "We're still your guardians," my mother purred sweetly. But the moment my lawyer entered the room, their smiles dropped, and their faces went ghostly pale. Before I dive into this wild story, tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now. And hey, hit that like button if you've ever had to deal with toxic family members. Don't forget to subscribe and join our storytelling community, because what happens next will leave you speechless. Before everything unraveled, my life was normal. At least, that's what I thought. I grew up in a small 2-bedroom apartment in Ohio with my parents, Martin and Linda. We weren't rich, but we had enough. Friday nights meant movies and microwave popcorn. Summers meant camping trips in our beat-up old tent, and Christmas mornings smelled like hot chocolate and cinnamon rolls. But looking back, the cracks were already there. Whispered arguments behind closed doors. Phone calls my dad always took outside. And overtime shifts that brought him home reeking of cigarette smoke and alcohol instead of car polish from the dealership where he worked. He'd always loved poker nights with his buddies, but those friendly games turned into weekend trips to Atlantic City. I overheard my mom one night sobbing, begging him to stop before we lost everything. He promised he would. But promises to my dad were like loose change. Easy to give away, and just as easy to forget. And my mom? She faded too. Her bright smile disappeared. She started calling in sick to work, locking herself in the bedroom with the curtains drawn. Sometimes she'd stare at me like she was memorizing my face, and then break down crying. I tried to be the perfect daughter. Good grades, cleaning without being asked, never complaining about my worn-out clothes. I thought if I was good enough, maybe just maybe, they'd love me enough to stay. But nothing I did mattered. Because one Tuesday morning in October, a morning so cold I can still feel it in my bones, I woke up to silence. Their bedroom door was wide open, the closet half empty, drawers pulled out, socks left behind like ghosts. On the kitchen counter was a single note in my mom's handwriting. "Rachel, we can't do this anymore. Your Aunt Caroline will take care of you. We're sorry." 16 words. That was it. 16 words to erase 13 years of being their daughter. I called my mom's phone until my hands shook. No answer. My dad's number? Disconnected. That night, I sat on the couch with a bowl of cereal, waiting by the phone. Waiting for someone who would never come back. By the second day, the landlord was banging on the door about overdue rent. When I said my parents were away, he gave me this look, the kind that says he knows you're lying. He muttered something about social services, and that's when fear swallowed me whole. On the third day, I couldn't take it anymore. I called my school counselor, who brought in Child Protective Services. That's when I met Ms. Dawson, the social worker. She had this calm voice that felt like a blanket, and she wasted no time making calls. I still remember her words. "Your niece has been abandoned. The alternatives are foster care, or you." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then, "Tomorrow morning." The next day, Aunt Caroline showed up in a sleek black car that didn't belong anywhere near our shabby building. She stepped out in a tailored gray suit, her silver-streaked hair pulled tight, pearls at her neck. Her face wasn't warm. It wasn't even sad. It was determined. "Pack only what you can carry," she said. Her voice clipped businesslike. "The rest can be shipped later." I stuffed one suitcase with clothes, shoved photo albums into my backpack, and left behind my childhood bedroom. Glow-in-the-dark stars still stuck to the ceiling. The drive to Caroline's house was 3 hours. She barely spoke, except to ask if I was hungry or needed a bathroom. I pressed my forehead against the glass, watching my entire world disappear in the rearview mirror. What followed was court dates, hearings, psychological evaluations. It was messy. Complicated. My parents never showed. It was as if they had vanished into thin air. Through all of it, Caroline never once suggested giving me up. She wasn't soft, she wasn't affectionate, but she was solid. Rock solid. The kind of steady that I didn't know I needed. And even though she never once said, "I love you," she never once broke a promise either. Moving into Aunt Caroline's house felt like being dropped into another universe. Her Victorian mansion sat on 2 acres of manicured lawns, with an iron fence that looked like it could keep the whole world out. My new bedroom was bigger than our old apartment. Heavy velvet curtains. An antique 4-poster bed. It felt less like a home, and more like a museum where I didn't belong. But belonging didn't matter to Caroline. What mattered were her rules. Breakfast at 7 sharp. Beds made before school. No shoes on the hardwood floors. 1 hour of piano practice every day, talent or not. Homework only at the desk, never on the bed. And dinner conversation? At least one current event and one personal achievement. No excuses. No television on weekdays. I broke every single rule in that first month, testing her, pushing, waiting for her to say the words my parents had said. "We can't do this anymore." But Caroline didn't give up on me. She didn't scream. She didn't threaten to send me away. Instead, she gave consequences. Logical, precise, almost like clockwork. Miss breakfast? The kitchen closed at 7:30. Homework unfinished? My weekend plans disappeared. Her love wasn't warm, but it was consistent. And every once in a while, that rigid mask slipped. Like the night I cried over a photo of my parents on their wedding day. She didn't scold me. She just handed me a handkerchief, sat beside me in silence, and stayed until the tears dried. Or the time I failed a math test. Instead of calling me lazy, she hired a tutor. Quietly. Without judgment. Caroline wasn't the mother I'd lost. But she was the mother I needed. Because underneath her cold exterior, she was teaching me something no one else ever had. That real love isn't about words. It's about showing up. Every single day. Caroline wasn't just wealthy, she was powerful. She had built her empire from almost nothing. What started as a tiny home decor shop in a strip mall had grown into 30 upscale boutiques across 3 states. Her life was discipline, order, and ambition. And she expected me to learn every bit of it. When my public school couldn't keep up, she enrolled me in Westfield Academy, a private school filled with kids whose families vacationed in Europe and drove cars I couldn't even pronounce. I felt like an imposter. My grades slipped. I spent nights crying over geometry proofs, convinced I didn't belong. Caroline's response wasn't sympathy. It was sharp, unflinching truth. "Your circumstances change through no fault of your own," she told me one night. "But how you respond, that is entirely your choice. You can use this opportunity, or you can waste it. I don't invest in lost causes." It wasn't the comfort I wanted, but it was the kick I needed. I hired a tutor with my allowance. I formed study groups. Slowly, painfully, I caught up. By junior year, I wasn't just surviving, I was on the honor roll. And Caroline pushed me further. On weekends, she took me to business meetings. "Watch who speaks first," she'd whisper. "Notice who concedes. Who avoids eye contact. Business is human psychology." At dinner, she quizzed me on marketing strategies. At night, she'd drop contracts in front of me and make me summarize them. I resented it sometimes. I thought she was trying to turn me into a project. But what I didn't realize then was that she was handing me the very tools that would one day save me. Because while my parents had walked away from responsibility, Caroline was building me into someone who could carry it. Her love was tough, sometimes brutal, but it was real. And as much as I hated to admit it back then, I was becoming more like her every single day. By the time senior year rolled around, I wasn't the same girl who once cried over unfinished homework. I had grit now. Caroline had carved it into me. College applications became our battleground. I wanted to follow my friends to a state school. Caroline, of course, pushed for the top universities. "They're not thinking about their futures," she said sharply. "They're thinking about their social lives. You, Rachel, need to think strategically." I snapped back. "I never asked to be your project." Her reply was ice cold, but unforgettable. "And I never asked to be your guardian. Yet here we are. I'm trying to give you opportunities your parents never even dreamed of." That silenced me. And for the first time, she opened a window into her past. She told me my father, the man who had abandoned me, was brilliant. He could solve math problems in his head, but he never got to college. He took a job at a gas station while she earned a scholarship. He resented her for it. His gambling, she said, was his attempt to get rich quick. My mother was just as bright, but crushed by her own circumstances. "I'm trying to break that cycle for you," Caroline admitted quietly. It was the first time she had ever spoken of them without bitterness. And in that moment, I understood why she pushed me so hard. In the end, I applied to 7 schools. 5 accepted me. I chose Northwestern University to study business and marketing. Caroline paid the tuition without hesitation, though I knew it was a fortune. College was a whole new world. I joined clubs, built friendships, discovered talents I never knew I had. Marketing strategy came naturally, and design flowed through me like it was second nature. Summers, I interned at Caroline's company, learning the ins and outs of the empire she had built. And something shifted between us. With the distance of college, the tension melted. Our weekly phone calls became warmer. She even laughed sometimes. When I graduated with honors, she didn't cry or hug me. She shook my hand firmly and gave me a single nod. But her eyes? They were full of pride. And for me, that was enough. 2 years after I graduated, the world shifted again. Caroline was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. The prognosis was grim from the start. I'll never forget how she broke the news. I was sobbing desperate, begging her for hope. But Caroline just looked me dead in the eyes and said, "We all die, Rachel. The only difference is when and how we use the time we have left." It was brutal, but it was her. Even as the disease ate away at her strength, she worked. She came to board meetings until she physically couldn't. She slowly handed me more responsibilities, one file, one contract, one deal at a time. The roles reversed. Suddenly I was the one enforcing her medication schedules, driving her to doctor appointments, making sure she ate. And in those final months, the steel in her softened. One night, as I tucked her into bed, she gripped my hand with surprising strength. Her voice cracked, the first time I'd ever heard it tremble. "You were the daughter I never allowed myself to have," she whispered. "Taking you in was the best decision of my life." 8 months later, Caroline passed quietly in her sleep. Her funeral was small, filled mostly with business associates and a few distant relatives. I stood at her graveside, realizing that this woman, this strict, stubborn, unbending woman, had been my true parent in every way that mattered. The house echoed with emptiness after she was gone. I caught myself listening for her footsteps, saving articles I thought she'd find interesting, almost forgetting she was no longer there. But even through the grief, I held on to her lessons. She had built me strong, so I kept running her business, honoring her legacy the only way I knew how, through action, not words. What I didn't know then was that Caroline's final lesson wasn't about business. It was about protection. Because 3 weeks later, when her will was read, I realized she had been preparing me for something much bigger. 3 weeks after the funeral, I received a letter from Caroline's longtime attorney, Mr. Harold Whitman. The will reading was scheduled for Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. in his downtown office. I assumed it would be straightforward. Some business partners, maybe a charity donation or two, and of course me. I arrived early, dressed in the kind of navy blue suit Caroline would have approved of. Mr. Whitman's office was all polished wood, leather chairs, and the faint smell of old books. I sat quietly, flipping through a business magazine, nerves gnawing at me. Then the door opened, and my entire body went cold. Standing there, as if summoned by ghosts, were my parents. The same parents who had vanished without a word 16 years earlier. My father looked wrecked. The once athletic man was heavier now, his shoulders slumped, his hair completely gray. My mother's face was sharp and tired, her smile stretched tight, as if it belonged to someone else. "Rachel," my father said, his voice rough. "Look at you. All grown up." My mother reached for a hug I couldn't return. Her perfume was the same, but everything about it felt wrong. "We've been trying to find you," she said softly. "You look so much like your aunt now. So sophisticated." I wanted to scream, Where were you when I needed you? But all I managed was, how did you know about today? We saw the obituary, my father explained quickly. We kept tabs from afar. We knew you were with Caroline. So they knew. They had always known. And they hadn't reached out once. Not for my birthdays. Not for my graduation. Not even when Caroline was dying. Mr. Whitman interrupted, his voice steady, professional. Please everyone, take your seats. We'll begin in a moment. And that's when it became crystal clear. They weren't here for closure. They weren't here for me. They were here for money. Mr. Whitman cleared his throat and began reading. His voice echoed in that wood-paneled office, each word heavier than the last. To my niece Rachel Monroe, I leave the entirety of my estate. The property at 412, Hawthorne Lane, all its contents and surrounding land. My full ownership share of Monroe Home Collections, valued at over $12 million. All bank accounts, investment portfolios, and personal effects. Everything. The room went silent. I knew Caroline was wealthy, but the sheer scope of it hit me like a tidal wave. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw my parents lean forward, ever so slightly, like vultures circling prey. My father coughed politely. Excuse me, Mr. Whitman, is there anything else? Yes, he replied, adjusting his glasses. Smaller bequests to longtime employees, and annual donations to charities Caroline supported. But the bulk of the estate belongs to Rachel. My mother forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She patted my hand. And I resisted the urge to pull it away. Well, this is quite a responsibility for someone so young. Luckily, as her parents, we're in a position to help manage things. I froze. What did she just say? My father leaned in, his tone dripping with false casualness. Legally speaking, since Rachel was a minor when Caroline took her in, and since our parental rights were never formally terminated, we remain her guardians. We'd be happy to assist with managing these assets until Rachel has more life experience. My stomach flipped. After 16 years of silence, they were here not to reconnect, not to apologize, but to claim my life, my inheritance, my future. I opened my mouth to object, but Mr. Whitman raised a hand. His voice calm, his eyes sharp. I believe there's some confusion about legal status here. Perhaps we should continue this discussion tomorrow, once I've gathered the necessary documentation. Shall we say 2 o'clock? My parents exchanged a quick glance. The kind only schemers share, before my father nodded. That'll be fine. We'll see you tomorrow, sweetheart. Sweetheart. The word burned like acid. As they walked out, my father slipped me a business card. Call anytime, he said smoothly. Day or night. We've got 16 years to make up for. The door shut. My knees buckled. And all I could think was, could they really take this away from me? Despite every warning bell in my head, I agreed to meet them for dinner that night. A part of me still craved answers. Answers only they could give. We met at a fancy Italian restaurant, one Caroline herself had often used for business dinners. They were already seated when I walked in. My father stood up quickly, pulling out my chair with exaggerated courtesy, like some actor in a play. My mother had put on fresh makeup, styled her hair, and forced a smile that screamed performance. We ordered a bottle of Pinot Noir. My father said proudly, "Your mother always loved it." "I don't drink wine," I said flatly, asking for water instead. It was a small refusal, but an important one. I needed them to understand. I wasn't the same child they had left behind. For 20 minutes we tiptoed through awkward small talk. They asked about my job, my education, my friends. I gave them short, clipped answers. But eventually the masks came off. "We owe you an explanation," my mother said at last, reaching across the table for my hand. I didn't move. "What we did was wrong." My father jumped in. "I had gambling debts. Dangerous debts. Your mother was battling depression. We convinced ourselves you'd be better off with Caroline. She had stability money. You had yourselves," I interrupted quietly. "That's all I ever wanted." He looked down at his plate. "I've been clean for 8 years now. Your mother found the right medication. We built a modest life. We thought about reaching out so many times." His voice trailed off. "Yet you never did." I snapped. They exchanged a look. Then my mother's voice softened into a plea. We've regretted it every day. Seeing you now, successful, beautiful. It breaks my heart that we weren't there to watch you grow up. For a brief moment, I wanted to believe her. But then the conversation shifted. Caroline did well by you, my father said casually, twirling pasta on his fork. The house alone must be worth $2 million, and the business? Overwhelming for someone your age. My mother leaned in. Estate taxes can be brutal. Without guidance, you could lose half of it. We can help you navigate all that. And just like that, the truth showed its face. Their smiles, their regrets, their apologies, all of it was a sales pitch. Finally, they dropped the act. Maybe you could help us too, my mother suggested softly. We've got a second mortgage. Medical bills. About $100,000 would change our lives. I stared at them, cold clarity settling in. They hadn't come back for me. They'd come back for the money. So, I said, my voice steady. My pain is worth $100,000 to you? They froze. My father cleared his throat. Rachel, that's not what this is about. We just want to be a family again. But I saw it in their eyes. This wasn't family. It was business. And I was their investment. The next afternoon, I returned to Mr. Whitman's office. My parents were already there, this time with their own lawyer, a slick man named Hoffman. They looked smug, like victory was already theirs. Mr. Whitman didn't flinch. He simply adjusted his glasses and spoke calmly. Before we begin, I want to clarify something. I am not only the executor of Caroline's estate, but also Rachel's attorney. Caroline made provisions years ago to protect her. Hoffman leaned forward, trying to sound confident. My clients simply want what's fair. They are her legal guardians. She was a minor when Caroline took her in. Whitman opened a thick file. That's where you're mistaken. Temporary guardianship was established at first, yes. But after multiple failed attempts to contact you, the court moved forward. Notices were sent. Public postings were made. You ignored them. My father shifted uncomfortably. We never got those notices. Whitman raised an eyebrow. Interesting. Because someone did appear in court on your behalf. A man named Lewis Barker, who presented affidavits, with your signatures, consenting to permanent guardianship. My mother's face drained of color. Those signatures were forged. Whitman laid down photographs from a private investigator. Caroline anticipated you might say that. She hired someone to track you. The investigator found Mr. Monroe gambling in Nevada casinos at the exact time. He also documented Mrs. Monroe working in cocktail bars. Both of you explicitly confirmed to him you wanted no parental responsibilities. He also documented a $15,000 payment from Barker to you, Mr. Monroe, the day after the affidavits were filed. My father slammed his fist on the table. That was a business deal. Whitman ignored him, pulling out a sealed envelope. He handed it to me. And then there's this. Caroline left you this letter, Rachel, to be opened only under these circumstances. The handwriting on the envelope was unmistakable. Caroline's precise, elegant script. My hands shook as I opened it. My dearest Rachel, I read aloud. If you are holding this letter, it means your parents have resurfaced. This is no coincidence. Over the years, they attempted to use you as leverage against me, demanding money, threatening to challenge custody, and fabricating illnesses. I protected you from all of it. I looked up. My parents stared at the floor. The letter continued. I never told you because I wanted you to heal without more betrayal. But know this. When you were 16, I made sure guardianship was converted into full legal adoption. You have been my daughter, in every way, ever since. They have no claim to you. No claim to my estate. And no claim to your future. Tears blurred my vision, but I kept reading. Remember, Rachel, blood is not family. Family is built through sacrifice, through consistency, through love shown in action. I am proud of the woman you have become. Trust yourself. Always. All my love, Mom. Mom. That single word broke something inside me. Whitman placed the adoption papers on the table. Legally binding. Signed. Sealed. Complete. And just like that, My parents' entire claim collapsed. I thought that letter had closed the chapter for good. I thought the adoption papers, the legal evidence, and Mr. Whitman's firm hand would finally make them disappear. I was wrong. That evening, their rental car rolled slowly up Caroline's, my driveway. Headlights cutting through the garden she once cared for so meticulously. The doorbell rang over and over, echoing through the empty halls until I finally opened the door. They stood there, desperate now, the charm gone. My father's face twisted with anger, my mother's eyes red from crying. "You can't shut us out," my father barked. "We're still your parents." I stood firm in the doorway, blocking their path. "No. You were my parents. 16 years ago. That ended when you walked away." My mother pushed past me into the foyer, her gaze darting around the mansion. "We just want to understand why you're being so cold," she pleaded. "We made mistakes, but we're here now. Doesn't that count for something? Here now." My voice broke, but I didn't back down. "You left me at 13. You didn't send a birthday card. Not one phone call. Not one letter. You knew exactly where I was. And you waited until there was money involved to come back." My father's face hardened. "That woman poisoned you against us. Caroline always resented me, and she used you to hurt me." "No," I said, steel rising in my chest. "She saved me. She gave me stability. She gave me a future. She taught me love isn't words you say when you want something. It's actions you show every single day." My mother started sobbing, collapsing into an antique chair. "How did you become so heartless? This isn't how we raised you." "You didn't raise me," I snapped. "Caroline did." My father stepped forward, his voice low and dangerous now. "You think you've won. But we can make your life very difficult. We can drag Caroline's name through the mud. Tell stories that will tarnish her precious reputation." I pointed to the corner of the foyer, the small black camera blinking red. "Every word you've said is being recorded. Caroline had those cameras installed years ago, after your first attempt to extort her. Keep talking if you'd like." His face went pale. He grabbed my mother by the arm. "Come on. She's not worth it." Not worth it. The words stung, but they were also the final confirmation I needed. They had never come back for me. Only for the money. As they stormed out, my mother turned back one last time, tears streaking her face. "You'll regret this. Money can't keep you warm at night. Family is everything." I held her gaze. "You're right. Family is everything. And Caroline was my family, not you." The police cruiser Whitman had arranged for patrol pulled into the driveway just as they left. Watching those flashing lights bounce off the iron gates, I felt something shift inside me. The fantasy of my parents' return was dead, and in its place was clarity. After that night, I filed for a restraining order. Mr. Whitman assured me it would stick. Given their history and the documentation Caroline left behind, no judge will ever give them ground, he said firmly. And for the first time in weeks, I actually believed him. But still, the house felt too quiet, too big. Some nights, I caught myself waiting for Caroline's footsteps in the hall. Other nights, I found myself saving articles thinking she would have loved this, before realizing I had no one left to show. Until one evening, while organizing Caroline's bedroom, I stumbled upon a small wooden box tucked inside her nightstand. Inside were report cards, school photos, clippings from every award I'd ever won. Even the program from my college graduation with my name highlighted. At the very bottom was a letter. "Rachel," it began, written in her steady, familiar hand. "I was never good at saying the words, but I want you to know them now. I love you. Not because I had to, not because of obligation, but because of who you are. Your resilience, your brilliance, your kindness despite all you've endured. Those have been my life's greatest joy to witness. I did not give you life, but raising you has been my privilege. And though I never asked you to call me Mom, know that in my heart, that's who I always was." I wept harder than I ever had before. Not for the parents who had returned with selfish motives, but for the woman who had never claimed the title, yet had earned it completely. 6 months later, the mansion feels like home. I've kept Caroline's elegant touches, but I've also made it mine. The dining room is now my home office. The business she built continues to thrive, And under my leadership, we've expanded online, opened new locations, and launched a foundation in her name, the Caroline Monroe Foundation for Family Reconnection. We provide therapy, scholarships, and housing for kids who've gone through abandonment, just like me. In every success story, I see her fingerprints. And me? Eva healed. Not completely, maybe never completely, but enough to understand that my parents leaving was never about me. It was about their limitations, their weaknesses. What mattered was Caroline's choice to stay, her decision to show up every single day. That's what built me. That's what saved me. Last weekend, I visited her grave. The headstone reads simply, Caroline Monroe. But beneath her name, I had one word engraved, Mother, because that's what she was. And that's what she'll always be. So I ask you, what do you believe family really is? Is it the people who share your blood? Or the ones who choose day after day to stand by you no matter what? Let me know in the comments. And if this story touched you, please like, share, and subscribe. Because sometimes, the family we choose brings more healing than the one we're born into.